Hello, friends. Welcome to Piqued, Meetup for electronic music makers. I'm the visual projection of Corey on AP, and behind the monitor, Rich Hogback. Tonight we've got a wonderful lineup for you, featuring Intafon and Otchy. Before we get into their performances, we have a wonderful presentation from Cali Audio with our friend Nate. Everyone's ready? We're going to start getting into these chats and learn more about Cali Audio speakers, which I personally use at home in my home studio. I've got the Innate myself, which are fantastic studio monitors. Really fun, really great for recording and listening back. And we've got a wonderful lineup, not just the Innates, we've got some other varieties as well, like line 6 or line 6. We make these Okay. How are we doing now? Sounding good? Great. Okay. Looks like we're doing better. And I got some great text from my pal Roberto letting me know that I sound choppy. All right. Thank you, Roberto. Appreciate it. All right. So let's go back to where I was supposed to say, welcome to Piqued, a meetup for electronic music makers. I am the digital persona of Corey Luna, also the projection of Corey Luna. And on AV is the man behind the monitor, Rich Hogben. And we've got a great lineup for you tonight. We've got Intafon and Chris Otchy performing tonight. And we've also got a presentation by Kali Audio Speakers with our friend Nate. And if Nate is ready, we'll have him explain more about Kali Audio Speakers. Nate, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Thanks.
All right, go ahead, sir.
First of all, thanks so much for having me on. Thanks for giving me the opportunity just to chat with everybody for a sec. We're really psyched to be a part of this. I think this is super cool and really looking forward to the performances. Kali Audio makes studio monitors that are very affordable. This is from our LP series. This is an LP8. It's a $199 monitor. We've also got an LP6, which is smaller and is only $149. And some things that make this really good for home studios. You can see there is a port tube on the front of the speaker. So these can go right up against a wall, and that's never going to be a problem. We also have these diagrams on the back of the speaker so that you can pretty much figure out which of these looks like your studio. And we've got dip switches to set it up. You don't ever have to open the user's manual or run an EQ yourself. We use a 2-layer voice coil on our woofer, so it gets deep, has very, very low distortion. It's 6 dB lower distortion than our nearest competitor. So if you're making electronic music at home, I don't think there is a better monitor for the price that you're going to be able to find at all. If you have any more questions about it, or if you're looking to buy them, they've got them at Sweetwater, and they can answer any questions that you have about it. So thanks again for having me on, and let's get to the music.
It's really cool, man.
Nate, thank you so much, man. Yeah, if anyone has more questions, please ask in the chat. I'm sure Nate will be happy to answer any questions in the Q&A session that we're going to have at the end of the performances. And with that, as I tried to mention earlier, which when I was having some choppy audio, I use the in-8 audio, Kali Audio speakers myself for my studio personally, and they're fantastic. My monitor and my video feed are sitting on top of one of those speakers right now. They're kind of big, but they're really great. They're also on some stands, so they're not sitting on the floor. They're really fun speakers, and I've been recording with them, and I even mastered it. I mixed an album on them myself. They're very fantastic. Nate, thank you again. It was great meeting you back in 2019. And thanks again for coming on the show and talking a little bit about the speakers. And I really hope we get a chance to talk more about them later on in the show. Now, let's get on to some music. And Intafon, are you ready to perform?
Let's go.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Intafon. That was Intafon. Thank you so much, sir. That was a fantastic set. All right. We'll hear more from Intafon later on during the Q&A session. If anyone has any questions for Intafon, please send us say something in the chat, ask us, or if you have my number, you can always text me, and you can ask me as well. And it was a fantastic set, Ryan. Thank you so much, man. That was really cool. And we're going to have another set coming up in just a minute. Mr. Chris Otchy has a set for us tonight as well. When you are ready, sir, I think we're ready for your set.
Are you ready for me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Terrific. Well, first I want to say, Intafon, awesome job. That was some serious building energy. It was just going up and building, and then a super mellow ending that I think the dynamics were beautiful, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope I think we're going to discuss it a little bit more in just a little bit.
Absolutely. Take it away, Chris.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Here we go.
ponytail, and then it moved into, she go with that ponytail, and then it moved into, and there is
Sky Diggers can come in and join us. And we have a new Tim Hadley played the stomping song for a long time. So Billy put a great time fiddle on it. It was our tribute to
Thank you very much.
Chris Otchy, everyone. How cool is that?
Thank you, Corey. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. It's so good to have you on. It's been almost a year since since I've seen you, and I'm so happy to see you again and to have you on the show. It's so much fun.
Heck yeah, man. It's really great to be here. I'm so psyched to be streaming with you.
Totally, man. It's so great, and man, we've got what you're doing right there, man. You've got you. I love the visuals you've got going on with the lovely different all the different. You've got all these different strobes going on right now, with different lights happening everywhere, which is really fun.
Yes.
And you've got some great machines going on over there. Very cool, man. Everyone was excited about the stalactites you've got printed there. It's very fun.
Yes. Yeah, man, I'm so into this guy, Nicholas Roerich. He's this Russian painter from the early 1900s. This dude was traveling all over the world and painting images of mostly of kind of like Nepal and like the Himalayas way back in the day. And this is one of his paintings. I love it.
Very cool, man. And
Thank you.
Ryan, thank you so much again for playing tonight, man. We're really happy to have you as well.
Thanks.
It was
It's
a
great to be
wonderful
on.
set you played tonight.
Thank you.
And Nate, how you doing over there, man?
Good. Those sets were awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Thank you, Nate. Man, I'm so curious. Those speakers are so cool. I wanted to ask you actually about. Tell us a little bit about like how you came to find like such high quality speakers at such an affordable price. Like, what's the story behind that?
Yeah, so a bunch of us all worked at JBL together, and that had been really fun for a long time. And then JBL got bought out by Samsung, and so things stopped being quite as much fun. So we were able to get out of JBL and start our own company. And so really what it comes from is what we liked there was making stuff that, most people could afford, because that's where music makers live. Not a lot of us have a lot of money to put behind what we want to do. And so if we can make a speaker that's less expensive, that still works really well, that's awesome. And so we knew how to make a studio monitor from our days at JBL and from some previous experience as well, and knew how to do it without spending too much money, and kind of knew where, there's places you have to spend money in order to make a good speaker. There's physics there. There's places where you don't have to spend as much money. And so we decided not to.
So is there like a lot of proprietary technology that you guys innovated, or were you kind of like doing derivative things from JBL?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of proprietary technology. One of the things that I would point out, I talked about having a front port on a studio monitor that's going to go into like bedroom studios and other home studios. And so that's important because it's going to go against a wall. And the shape that we arrived at here, let me see if I can shine a light in here. This is a little awkward.
So we lost it there, Nate.
Actual shape.
If you could go back for a minute, we're talking about the studio monitors. Sorry about that. Continue,
Sure.
sir.
You're doing the boombox 80s style.
Yeah. So the shape that we arrived at for that port tube took days and days and days of airflow simulations, because you need all the air to exit the port tube at the same speed so that you don't get chuffing noise and other sort of compression artifacts coming through that port tube. Because if you do have those things, your bass is going to sound like crap, and you're not going to know what your bass sounds like. And so that's the sort of thing, that research and development only costs our time. And as a startup company, our time is worthless. It doesn't cost any money for you if you're buying the thing. It's just our time to make the thing happen. So that sort of thing, the shape, the waveguide, the way that the woofer is constructed, all of those, we were able to spend more time than people typically try to spend on these low price speakers. And I think that means that we have a better speaker for less money than what's out there currently.
Nice. Seems like a really cool company and really cool speakers.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, I had a question about the. I really like the fact that you can toggle the dip switches on the back to adjust based on where you want to actually put the speakers. But I was curious. Tell us about the Bluetooth adapter.
Yeah, and is mine sitting at my desk? No, it's not. Yeah, so we've got a little Bluetooth box. Actually, I have one here. One sec. this little guy. And it's basically Bluetooth into your phone and then XLR or TRS out, so that you can get into whatever system you're already using. And the thought there is, like, if you have an iPhone, you don't have a 3.5 millimeter jack anymore, and that's dumb. That's a pain in the ass. Because when you're trying to,
Worst innovation ever by Apple. What the heck, guys?
Right. And so basically, this just lets you get out of your phone via Bluetooth and into your professional system. You shouldn't record music via Bluetooth, but you could. For collaboration, for initial ideas, for just farting around, it's great.
Yeah, I was also thinking it'd be nice for just if you've uploaded tracks and they're for streaming and you want to hear what the sound quality sounds like.
For sure.
Down as well.
Yeah, Electric Kitchen wants a studio monitor. Let's hit up my email. We'll talk.
And he knows what he's talking about. He really does. With Electric Kitchen, he knows his stuff really well, Nate. You'll
okay.
He's
cool.
been around the world today. I've
awesome.
seen him in multiple places.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's a surge aficionado. Absolutely. Nate, again, man, thanks again for letting us know more about the in-depth. I'm glad you talked more about the Bluetooth device. Could you tell us a little bit about the subwoofer that Cali Audio produced?
Yeah, so we make a subwoofer that we call the WS12. And the point of this subwoofer is so that, pretty much you two artists who performed tonight, this is like for you. This can live under your desk and be a studio sub, and then when you want to go out and play a gig, it will work. And so it's a 12-inch subwoofer. We took a Honda Accord and made sure that it fits in the trunk. That was the design spec. So, if you're Ubering to your gig, you're going to be able to take the sub along with you. Yeah.
Wait, as like a monitor as a monitor for yourself or for the club?
For the club. If you're playing a big club, forget it. You need a real subwoofer. But if you're playing a smaller club, I've been to some of the clubs in Haight-Ashbury. You can't fit more than 12 people in there.
Right.
You don't need an 18-inch subwoofer, but you want the thing to get loud. You want that boom boom. And so that's what it'll do for you. And it's a real studio sub too.
Nice.
So cool, man. I love the subwoofer you got going on. It's so much. That's such a cool thing. Like, I haven't purchased it myself, but I was impressed when you guys launched it. It was such a cool idea that it's something that I would eventually want to invest in for my own home studio.
Yeah, we launched it was a live /studio sub, and then live music died. So hopefully we're all back at work in the next couple months, and people will actually get to use it out live. I just saw Juan said, I want a sub, where can I get one? Everything's at Sweetwater. And everything is powered. All of our products are powered. And the subwoofer itself is the WS12.
Thank
Cool.
you, man.
Awesome.
Let's get into a little bit of let's thank Nate so much, man. That I love hearing more about Cali Audio. What you guys are doing at Cali Audio is so much. It is really fantastic. I'm really excited about what you guys are doing. I love the innateds that I have at home. I love the fact that you've got basically an EQ on the back of it, which I think Ryan, you mentioned earlier. It's such a cool feature. It really is. And the fact that you can do XLR, you can do the 1/4 inch out as well. And I think there was another
RCA too, right?
RCA.
Yeah, RCA in on our speakers as well.
So there's you've got at least 3 different varieties of inputs for Cali Audio. It's such a great idea. And personally, I think I'm using the 1/4 inch out in as my personally, just because of my interface connection, and it works perfectly, man. They're really fun.
That's great.
And let's get into a little bit about some of the music tonight we heard. I would love to hear something about if anyone has any questions, I would love to hear something. Any questions for Intafon or Chris Otchy? Let me jump into this right now and ask Intafon. Ryan, tell me a little bit about how you set up your performance for tonight, what you're using, and how you were thinking about how you kind of premeditated your set tonight.
Well, so oftentimes I'll come up with a sort of a thing that I want to try, or something that I want to base the entire presentation around. I had been toying around with taking some samples, which were actually running out of the Tip Top Audio 1, which you can't see behind this mess of cables here. And I spent a lot of time actually finding some tracks that I wanted to sort of use as the underpinning for the rest of the performance. Since MF Doom just passed away recently, I sort of themed it around a tribute to those of us who are no longer around. I have the sample from Aaliyah, MF Doom. There's a Nujabes sample in there, and also a J Dilla sample. The two piano ones are the Nujabes and the J Dilla, and then of course the sample of just somebody saying Doom in there. So what I did is I wanted to sort of base the entire thing around that. So I took a lot of time and sort of crafted the samples so that they synced up with the 120 BPM sort of bass beat that I had, and then I sort of worked around that and crafted the drums around that and crafted the sequences and everything else around that. And then I worked with played around with the Echophone and also the pressure points, so that I could run them through. What am I running them through? I think I'm running the samples through the LXD, and then through the Make Noise LXD, and then through the Polyvox filter from Harvestman, and then into the Echophone, and then out. So, and then what I'd have set up is the pressure points allows me to adjust the amount of echo feedback and everything, so that I can have really choppy vocals, which I love, and then blending that in with the actual sort of echoed and sort of propelled forward stuff. The original that I remember hearing a long time ago, Boards of Canada. There was the Children album, and then also this guy that I knew back in Atlanta. It goes by Prefuse 73. He did a lot of really chopped vocal stuff that were just excellent. So I've always loved that style. So I wanted to play around with that for this.
Excellent.
So I got a question for you. I really loved how everything, your whole set, as I was saying before, like your whole set was kind of like building. It was like chaos. It's like kind of building. And it's like more and more complexity, and then it kind of like emptied out. And I'm wondering, just like how much of that did you when you started building the set? Like how much of that was set out from the beginning, and how much of it was kind of like something that you found as you were rehearsing it?
I never I take a lot of sort of stock in that sort of man-machine sort of theory, aesthetic, whatever you want to call it. Because when I start off with something on the modular, I just end up building around and just sort of it's a journey, and it's a process entirely. And sometimes I'll work on something for 3 or 4 hours, and it's just not working at all, and I'll just take all the cables out and start completely over. I almost did this actually with this one.
So,
yeah, I mean that's the thing that I love about modular, is that it really is this collaborate. It's the closest thing I think of collaborating with like another intelligence. I mean, it's like you are interfacing with this machine.
Yeah.
It doesn't exactly have its own intelligence, but it kind of does. And if you patch it right, it can really be something that you can interact with in a really interesting way. and
Yeah.
there's a lot of unpredictability, and that can be both exciting and frustrating.
Yeah, and I've taken a lot of music in my life, and but I was never really a musician. So coming at the modular, it's really freeing to not to just sort of go into it and just explore. And there's no rules. There's no specific thing that you have to do. It sounds nicer when you get things in tune, but other than that.
So we've got a question from Malarkey. Do either of the performers' sets relate to their recent albums? So, Intafon, would you like to address that first?
Yeah, sure. I've been sort of on a binge, sort of teaching myself a little bit of sort of mastering and sort of after production. So I just released an album recently, I guess like last week, and then I have another one that I'm going to release next Tuesday, and then I have another single that I'm going to release later this week, I think. What day is today? Yeah, later this week. It all sort of comes out of the same place. It's very interesting. Sort of, what I found is that with the modular, there's certain parts of it that, depending on the modules that you have, that sort of defines your sound. But then in another way, you sort of, through exploration, you sort of find out what your sound kind of is. And I think that that's a really interesting thing about it. And the album that I just released, it's sort of an earlier step on the journey to where I am now and where I will end up being.
Yeah, that what you just said there is, it reminds me of something I've been thinking a lot about lately, which is this idea of, if we're all using the same modules, say, for example, like how do you find your own voice in that? If we're all using the same kind of basic pieces of equipment, how do you find your own voice using those pieces of equipment? And I don't know, I guess like how many like mini Moogs are out there, and how many people have found a way to express themselves adequately and uniquely with that.
Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of a stupid question, but it's something I've been thinking about lately.
No, I think that's a really interesting question. I mean, you see a lot of different challenges. The only thing I haven't seen yet is the one knob module, but you see a lot of 3 module challenges, or 10 knob challenge, or 5 cable challenge, or something like that, where people will take that sort of thing and sort of distill it down and try to see what they can get out of it. But the thing that I found that's really interesting is that, and also frustrating, is that when you first start using a module and you didn't read the manual like you should have, and you're screwing around with it and just making a mess, you'll go back later and say, God, how did I do that? Now that I know how to use the module, use it properly, I have no clue how to create that sound that I created before. So it's really interesting that, if you come at these things fresh, it's totally different from after you've used it for a while. It's very interesting.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely, man. And Chris, we would like to hear a little bit more on your side of, back to Malarkey's question.
Oh yeah.
Does your current patch for today relate to the recent album you put out?
Yeah, it's often my instinct for the past couple of performances that I've done is just to like create something brand new, or create something that has nothing to do with something that I've just released recently. But my wife just this week was like, "Why don't you play something from your album? That would like make sense, wouldn't it?" Like, that's a really good idea.
She's good advice.
What's that?
She has good advice.
Exactly, she does. And so, actually, the second song I played tonight was the second track from my album that just came out, Merlin's Voice. So I was able to kind of take that, which was kind of totally in my Ableton session, and kind of translate it, kind of take snippets of that and put it into the Octatrack, and kind of like recompose it a little bit. So I was actually able to recreate one song from my album. But that's that's kind of how I came to choose this setup, is because I feel very much like Ryan does, in that working with modular, it's usually like a very much a trial and error thing, and it's hard to replicate things sometimes. And for this performance, I was like, I would like to do something where I can replicate something and have it be the same if I wanted to be the same. And so using kind of more sample-based instruments and programmed synths that will sound consistently the way that you know that they should, or without a whole lot of variability. That's kind of how I ended up with this kind of setup for tonight.
Yeah, because if you're using modular, you're either doing something like Obsidic, or I guess Tony Surgeon does stuff where he'll have the same sort of setup that he uses and reuses. Although he did mention in that one podcast that he tears it down once it gets too familiar. But yeah, it's very hard to replicate.
Yeah, I mean, I've had instances of, like, I'm getting ready for some kind of performance or something, and I have my patch all set up, and it'll sound one way, and then you get to the venue and set it up, and then you plug everything in, and it sounds completely different for some reason. And maybe the tuning's a little bit off, or maybe a knob got shifted, or the temperature is different there than it was in your house, or whatever. It's like, that's stressful, but that's also the beauty of modular, is that there always is that kind of
danger,
unpredictability. Yeah, danger, totally.
And we've got a question from Dylan Sang, good friend of ours, also known as Dylan909 and Mr. Unruly. He's got a question for Nate about Kali Audio. Is that powered sub or passive? What is the name again?
Yeah, so that's a powered sub. All of our stuff is powered. And it is the WS12, which is WS stands for watts subwoofer, because it's 1,000 watts, and we name everything after cities in California.
That's right. Oh, Nate, I love that. And I remember reading that in the manual that I got from the Innates. Could you actually run through that a little bit for us? I'd love to hear more about the cities you name your speakers after.
Yeah, so LP is Lone Pine, which is the town where, if you're going to climb Mount Whitney, which is the highest point in the lower 48 states, you start in Lone Pine. So it's our first speaker. We thought it was kind of ambitious. It's exciting. We could die. So that was a little bit of what we were thinking there. And then Independence, which are the three-way speakers, are built on the same platform as the LP6s and the LP8s. And so Independence is literally just one town up from Lone Pine. So it's one up. That's kind of what we were going for there. And then Mountain View, which is our Bluetooth controller, is sort of an FU to Apple and Google for taking the 3.5 millimeter jack off their phones. So we named it after the town where it recorded.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Now we've got some other great questions here. I think I missed a couple. I want to go back a little bit, make sure I didn't miss everybody. And I apologize if I do. Got a great question for Chris, if you're back, Chris.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
From Next Expanse, for Chris, Next Expanse asks, we noticed that the music seemed to skirt the barrier between ambient and harder stuff. Was that intentional? What is the thinking behind that?
Yeah, great question. I have always been, I've been making ambient music for a while, and it's been really a lot of fun and enjoyable. And for some reason, over the past like 6 or 8 months, I've been wanting to have create something that is a little bit more structured. And I've always been interested in some of the tangential or kind of like adjacent genres, like dub techno and dub and, atmospheric house and deep house and stuff like this, stuff that has that same kind of like dreamy, etheric textures and cool other kind of stuff that you might also find in ambient music, but has a little bit more of a beat behind it. So I think you'll hear that in the album that I just put out. It's definitely still got some of the ambient vibes, but it's also kind of working with a more solid rhythmic bass and a little bit more low end. So that's kind of the direction I've been going in lately, and that's how I ended up with this kind of a set tonight. So yeah, it was definitely intentional, and I feel like it's a direction that I feel I'm leaning towards these days.
And Chris, we've got another question, I think particularly from Rich. He asks, do you create albums in Ableton and perform live with Octatrack?
Yeah, I've been recording stuff in Ableton for years. Whether I was kind of recording it, like recording hardware into Ableton and then adding extra stuff on top of it, or I've had a couple tracks I've just done 100% in the box. Either way, I find that this kind of like more rhythmic stuff does translate better onto machines like the Octatrack. Because it's a loop machine, and it's very easy to kind of create things that are segmented. Here's pattern 1, here's pattern 2, here's pattern 3, and you can kind of switch between them. That's great. I mean, ambient stuff in general, I find doesn't work quite as well in that kind of segmented format. I find like the best ambient music, or the stuff that I love the most, seems to be very loose and drifty, and it's a lot of textures, and things are kind of like there's pads, and things are kind of moving all over each other, and it's fun as a performer to kind of like manipulate those layers as you're going along. So I find if you're doing rhythmic stuff, or if I'm doing more rhythmic stuff, composing it and kind of finishing it in Ableton and then translating it into the Octatrack is a very natural flow, especially since you can kind of like download your loops or stripes from Ableton and just bring them right into Octatrack. That's a great way to go. I've also been just kind of writing tracks completely with the Octatrack and some other external gear, and sometimes that's recorded into Ableton. And like tonight, the first track that I did was something that I created completely on these instruments, and then later on recorded them into Ableton. So the rhythmic stuff, yeah, it's good. It's an easy workflow.
And Ryan, I was curious about your set too. In relation to how Chris explained his set, how do you approach an album? You released quite a few recently.
Yeah, so I have to say that I haven't really been very disciplined about creating an album yet. I've been recording a lot of different tracks, and I finally just got around to kind of going through those and sort of crafting them, kind of like you would do with a mixtape, and sort of going through a bunch of different songs. I was actually a DJ a long time ago, so I kind of like that sort of taking these collections of things and sort of putting them together in sort of a cohesive whole. I've been thinking about what I would do to create an album, and I haven't really come up with a good answer yet. But I sort of feel like also at least the way that I approach the modular and music and sound in general, I sort of feel like, the same way that I'll create a patch and, just unplug it and throw it all away, this sort of, the tracks that will, I sort of suspect that my next album will be a collection, or, well, my future album that is actually new tracks will be, stuff the detritus has fallen away, and, the ones that remain will end up being on the album. Because I sort of feel like that's sort of, and I'll arrange them in such a way that it sort of makes sense, or, exclude ones that don't make sense, but it's sort of, I feel like it's a representation of, where I'm at and what I'm creating at the time, and the sort of journey that I'm on creating music. I just got a very interesting the wing pinger instrument by Meng Chi, and I've been playing around with that, and sort of going in the opposite direction as Chris.
Less structure.
Going far, far away from structure.
And how's the thing been so far for you?
Pardon?
How has that instrument been for you so far?
It has been very interesting. I've only had about 6 hours to play with it so far, but it is kind of wild and finicky, and it's, there's not really a manual that comes with it, and it's kind of more this like man machine thing where you're sort of interfacing with it and sort of finding out what it likes to do and how it likes to behave. So it's kind of interesting.
Right on. Hey, I have a question for you, Ryan. How do you know when a track is done? Is that purely intuition, or do you have a process of asking trusted friends or something, or what do you do there?
Excellent question. Thank you, Chris.
It's very qualitative process. So when I'm talking about when I know that a track is done, at least for me, that means that that patch is not going to get any more attention, at least in terms of additional stuff added to it. I will have recorded it, and then I pull all the plugs.
When you pull the plugs, it's done.
It's done. Yes.
Right
It's sort of, I love the fact that it's that sort of ephemeral nature, because we're in the digital age, like everything lives forever. So it's a very interesting, it's like, gosh, what was it? I think Perubu had an album like a long time ago that once you opened it up and it was exposed to light, it would start to deteriorate. So it's very interesting to work with things that, once you unplug it, it's gone, and it's very freeing, actually. You can go through and monkey around with levels and that sort of thing, or if you record it onto multiple tracks, you can massage the tracks and levels and that sort of thing.
It reminds me of that Banksy painting that people bought, and it self-destructed, shredded as soon as they bought it.
Right.
As soon as you buy it, it shredded itself. Which is very much like modular.
Yeah, shreds your bank account. Works out well.
Yeah, you were talking about you were mentioning humidity and heat and that sort of thing, and it was reminding me about when I first heard about that. What's that module that picks up? It's a CV controlled shortwave, and actually the Coma Electric field kit has it too, or well, it has it for shortwave and AM and FM. But this thing is the shortwave one. I can't remember who makes it, and I thought it sounded like a really great idea, and I actually bought a shortwave radio off of Amazon, and I couldn't get anything. Nothing would come in.
Really?
Nothing at all. And I was like, well, that's not going to work very well. And it sort of reminded me of, well, that's the reason that Tom Whitwell came up with the radio music because the failed attempts at doing the John Cage performance with the radio signals that ended up not working inside the music hall that he tried to perform it in or something, I think.
Yeah, that sounds like a John Cage thing. Very much so. But I'm not sure. It's kind of funny because I think one of my friends, Lemmy Hamaker, has just recently purchased something from Coma Electric for his one of his monitor synths, and with that kind of idea in mind. I'm not quite sure. He might chime in about that.
Was it the oh gosh, I can't remember, that box that is totally awesome and picks up electromagnetic waves and turns them into sound, essentially?
It probably is. It sounds like something he'd be interested in.
Yeah, that thing is amazing. I've considered getting it, but then I would end up with hours and hours of field recordings that I would have to go through and figure out what to do with.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, we've got a question here. I think from Dylan. Dylan Sangs. He says, I'm sure everyone has had the experience where a hard drive dies or something and it totally sucks, but it's also weirdly freeing. Have either of you had that experience of a hard drive dying where you had so much great work on it and you had to just kind of recreate it from memory, similar to patching a modular system where you thought you had something great, changed something, and then you couldn't find it again?
Oh yeah.
Chris, Ryan, have you, either of you would like to comment on that?
I've had instances where I've labored over something, and then for some reason or another the file is corrupted, or you lose it, or what have you, and it's never been, I think there's that initial moment of like absolute frustration and despair, and then for me at least, that's very soon followed by a feeling of, it just wasn't meant to be. This it just wasn't in the cards for whatever this is, to reach the public. And knock on wood, it's never happened to me in an instance where I was like right where the thing that I lost was so dear that I was like, this is absolutely irreplaceable. But I've been in frustrating situations like that for sure. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I think after I've moved a lot in the past several years, and you become very good at sort of getting rid of things, and not holding on to things, and holding on to certain things because they're very important to you, but then sort of getting perspective on what's not important and what is important. But then when it comes to, like, for digital files, for example, it's not necessarily always lost.
True.
I actually had actually the single that I'm gonna release, I think this week, was a soundtrack that I did for a video back in 1998, and the first track is actually this sort of dates me and pinpoints me as to what my profession has been at some point in time or another. But I had a Macro Media, or is it Macro Mind at the time, director file that got corrupted, and it was like a project I was working on, totally lost. But then I opened it up in I can't remember the application. It was some Mac application. I think you could probably do the same thing with Audacity and just open a raw file, and just some of the crazy, like, garbage noise, crazy sounds that you get out of that is very interesting. It's sort of like putting your ear up to a hard drive and hearing the ocean or something. It's very interesting.
I like that. Yeah, that's cool.
And Nate, I would love to hear a little bit about your fuzzy friend there. Let's go.
Yeah,
like Chihuahua.
that's Rory.
Is that Rory?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Hi, Rory.
Yeah, say hello to Rory for us, please. Ways like I'm a dog guy. I got a dog here.
um, did anybody else lose all their music on MySpace when that happened?
I was not. That's a great question.
Wait, what happened?
So,
Wait, what?
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 Wait, MySpace isn't around still?
I got a funny story about that.
Okay, tell us about MySpace because I don't think I ever put any of my music on MySpace, although I was recording at the time when I was there. But no, please.
Yeah,
take it
so
away.
they had like a kind of semi SoundCloud like setup, I think is
They
fair to
did.
say. Like
Yeah.
bands could upload,
Yeah.
you could create a
They
band page and
have,
upload your
like,
stuff.
tracks on there.
Yeah. And my college band did. Like all our stuff was on SoundCloud, and at a certain point I had a Mac that died, and so we lost everything. So SoundCloud was it. And then a couple years ago, somebody just hit the wrong button. It wasn't intentional or anything, but SoundCloud deleted all their music hosting.
SoundCloud or MySpace?
Sorry, oh my god.
I heard
What, SoundCloud too?
So yeah, like I don't know. I kind of find it freeing too. I lost everything that I had written before I turned like 23. Was no longer recorded, and so it's like, all right, well, if I feel like any of that was worthwhile, I'll need to re-record it. So far, I haven't, so that tells you where I'm at.
Well, Rich just said yes. It was an accident. Who knows? Seeing as like, I can't remember the last time I logged into MySpace. I think it was before I was 30, and I don't want to tell you what age I am now. So it's been a while.
Last time I logged in was when I quit the company in 2013. I worked there for a year.
I think we lost the audio on that one, man.
What was working at MySpace like?
It was kind of interesting. This was after they had been acquired by the ad companies and had sort of done that refacing work. And then I ended up getting another job up here after that. But I worked on the music player on that. It was interesting. There's a lot of great people that worked there, but it was clearly on its way out and kind of going down the tubes. They ended up. I think a lot of the content ended up being sort of sponsored content and that sort of thing. At the end of the day,
I must say, like, MySpace actually, I'll give them credit that they had a great platform for musicians. It was actually
they did at the time.
something that was actually very unique for my.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they had to pivot right after Facebook sort of took off. They had to sort of find their own place.
And that was the only, and that was a standout point for MySpace at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Back in maybe 2004, 2006.
Mm-hmm.
That MySpace started to put out more of the music profiles for bands specifically to have a place to have their music. Yeah, that was a cool idea, and I haven't seen it happen since. Honestly, like we've of course we've got like SoundCloud, things like that happening as well, but that wasn't as big a thing at the time, and it was a great idea to have a profile for bands and host their music where you can actually stream their tracks if the band chose.
Mm-hmm.
That was something unique at the time. And now, we've it's completely different now. Thing is absolutely different. We're now on, doing all the different streaming sources, whether it be iTunes or Spotify. Those are probably the main two extreme sources that everyone goes to nowadays for all those for everything, and myself included. If I'm releasing an album, I'm gonna make sure it's gonna be available on those streaming sites. Um, and that's actually an interesting question for Ryan and Chris. Where do you guys go for releasing your music? Now, I would assume maybe Bandcamp might be a source for you guys. Please tell me.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, Bandcamp is definitely like the best indie um, distribution platform. I think they're really awesome. They allow you to customize your page, and they give you you can actually make money doing it. You can sell your merch there, and it's very artist friendly. And over the pandemic, the past year, they've done this whole Bandcamp Friday thing, which is great. And plus, you could do donations. Their whole thing is awesome. And in fact, I'm really excited that they're in the East Bay. That is really cool, and I hope once the pandemic is over, someday we can go over there. I think they have a space there, and they do events, or at least they were for a minute. So yeah, Bandcamp is definitely the best, but the problem is like I feel like it's really only the artists and super in tune, the super dedicated fans that are going to Bandcamp. Most music listeners in general, I think, are using either Spotify or some other maybe like Apple Music or Amazon or something, but I feel like Spotify is probably the leader. So it's kind of like you kind of have to, if you want to reach people, if you want people to hear you, I feel like Spotify is kind of the necessary evil. And I'm not gonna get into the details of it, but I feel like you kind of have to. But I don't know. What do you think, Ryan?
I really like Bandcamp. I sort of feel like at least at this point in time, it's sort of a company with a heart, and I think that that's a really great sort of thing, especially with with the way that all the other social media companies are sort of falling down on the job in terms of like really supporting their customers and their user base. I haven't released anything on the streaming services yet. I'm still investigating, if I want to do that and how I want to do that. Like SoundCloud has this new service now that allows you to stream to multiples, that pushes it out to Apple and all those different things. And then there's, DistroKid and all those other companies. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. The chat that we've been talking about, there was a thread and on our Slack about the music industry and that sort of thing, and how sort of broken it is. So I like Bandcamp because it does sort of get you in touch with the people that sort of care about the music a little bit more. And for me, I generally speaking, I don't know if I would be able to make a career out of this necessarily. So it's just something that I love to do. So Bandcamp is a great way to sort of reach people at the same time. I've found that so much more so now than it was. So we were talking about MySpace. So much more now than it was 10 years ago. It's very, very difficult to not just entirely get lost in all the noise. To sort of set yourself apart from everyone else.
Yeah, and there is a lot of noise. There's a ton of noise out there, and the more I feel like you look into that, the more like depressing it is, and like disheartening. So I try not to pay too much attention to that, and try to pay more attention to like, why are you doing this? Like, what is the purpose? And I think when I get down to it, for me, it's like, this is not only super fun, but it's also a great stress reliever, and it's a great way to express yourself. And I feel like it does actually make me mentally healthier when I'm like in here creating. Even if no one's listening to it, it's like you have that like mental health, emotional, spiritual benefit of just like getting stuff out. Of course, you want people to listen to it. You want to have people like pay attention to what you're doing. You want to be heard. You want to be seen. But what's the cost of that, and how far are you willing to go, and all that kind of stuff? These are deep questions that I feel like any artist that's been around for a minute is like probably thinking about these things, and is like, how much do I want to try to like swim against this tidal wave of like resistance that is just naturally occurring right now?
And Chris, you brought up a great question, and actually, one of our associates, Next Expanse, has asked the question. Well, he's kind of not asked the question, but rather kind of stated, Shockwave was almost as cool as Hyperfun. And I have to comment that Next Expanse has actually brought up a great reference to Shockwave, because Shockwave, as some of us know, was a really fun animation app that was
multimedia
back in Ryan, back in maybe almost 20 years ago.
I think it became Macromedia back in like 1996. I think it was Macromind before that.
And back then, and even about 20 years ago, it was there was a guy working at Shockwave who created just as like a way to advertise what you could do with it. He created characters. He did a characters that was it was Radiskull and Devil Doll, and he created some animations, and they were really fun. And it was just basically
I remember seeing that.
Exactly. Basically, it was Radiskull, and his sidekick was Devil Doll, and he was creating. And the guy was very much into heavy metal, but he was creating raps on top of metal. They're basically metal raps, and they were fantastic at the time when he was doing it, and he created, and it became popular enough for him to kind of create a following and create a series of shorts that he created just as a way to kind of show what you can do with Shockwave at the time. Of course, now is a little dated now, but was very fun at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of, when I mentioned the sort of noise and everything like that. Back in those days, the internet was very, very quiet, but punctuated with very interesting explosions of sound and light. And I remember one of the first guys that did something that blew everybody away in Macromedia Flash at the time was that guy Yugo P. I don't remember his name. It's a Japanese guy, and he created this site that was just so slick that it was all over everywhere. It was very interesting.
Absolutely.
Sounds dope.
And we're getting kind of close to the end point now. It's about 8:45, 8:47 right now, and
it's about time to go to bed.
I have a question for Chris. So
Yes.
we were talking about Bandcamp and all these other places, and actually it's a question for you too as well, Corey. Where do you? I mean, I know what I do, but I'm curious as to, how do you guys find new music and music that new artists and that sort of thing? I ask because I worked for this radio station in Atlanta, Georgia, a long time ago that just played all kinds of different diverse stuff, and that sort of set a scene for me in terms of what I needed to consume in terms of music. So I'll go all over everywhere to find stuff. But what is your process for finding new music to listen to?
Chris, would you like to ask?
Yeah, I'll go first. I There's a bunch of things. I mean, the first thing is that I follow a ton of people on Bandcamp, so labels as well as artists. So that's the first thing. I get emails every single day from people releasing new stuff. That's the first thing. Especially Bandcamp Friday. Forget about it. I want to like delete the whole thing because I mean my whole inbox is just like Bandcamp notifications. So that's one thing. Next thing is radio stations. They still exist. NTS is awesome.
KFJC.
Yeah, they're great. There's one in Seattle, KX something or other. I forget. And then there's a local guy who does an awesome electronic music show called High Point Low Life, and he does podcasts. And he's right here in San Francisco. And then just friends, friends just shoot me emails or you see something on Instagram or Twitter or something like that. Someone will be like, "Yo, check this out," So those are the major ways that I hear about music. How about you, Corey?
For me, Chris, I mostly stick to Bandcamp. That is my favorite platform for learning more about new music out there. I love listening to what's going on and being able to pick the genres I want to listen to. And the other thing I love about Bandcamp is that there's no commercials. You can listen to whatever you want. Granted that the artist provides you access to their tracks, you can listen to anything, and there's no commercials. Compared to other streaming sources, Bandcamp doesn't sell you anything. You listen to what you want, and that's the beauty of Bandcamp. You listen to anything. You look at the genres you want to listen to, and you're going to find weird different artists doing unique things that you wouldn't find anywhere else. Bandcamp is that source. And granted, they have that, that's the name, Bandcamp. It's they're in the name. Like, as if you're performing in your own garage at your parents' house. It's just like that. It's right there, and you're experiencing all these great musicians that you would never hear of with the exception of Bandcamp. It's an amazing platform that has allowed a lot of independent artists to showcase their work in a way that there's no other place for. And to me, that's one of the beauties of it. And there's no other place for it. And with asking me where I find new music, I'm just really going to Bandcamp. That's the main place I'm going to find anywhere. Like I don't go to Spotify. I don't go to YouTube. I don't go to iTunes. I only go to Bandcamp. It's the only place I find anything unique and fresh and inspiring.
How about you, Ryan? Where do you find stuff?
I have multiple spots that I go to. I actually still am a Last FM user, so I will check out related artists on Last FM. Bandcamp is a super great resource. particularly the labels on Bandcamp, because you can sort of, it functions as a label on other things. The biggest criticism I had of some of the streaming services that Spotify actually does support, I have to give them credit for it, is the fact that you can search by label, because labels often will sort of house, sort of like-minded individuals. So you can sort of find new artists that, may be popping up. There's this artist that's coming out on Roster Noten. Oh, I think maybe the album actually already came out. Maybe I missed it. But it's really great, sort of minimal stuff. It's sort of along the same ilk as Alvin Noto and those guys. Also YouTube is a very interesting place for it. I read an article the other day about these sort of the YouTube genre, they were calling it, which is just random stuff. So it's like, this random Japanese Inca album from the 60s, or, some really old African rock band, or, just crazy other stuff, or, like lo-fi hip-hop stuff. That stuff's really great, some of it. Vaporwave. Somebody has to say vaporwave.
Totally.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, I know YouTube has a huge. I want to say it's like the second biggest search. Most used search algorithm. I read something that's saying it was the second biggest search algorithm used on the internet, like next to Google or something crazy like that.
Yeah, I
mean,
it.
people are. Yeah, there's a ton of people that use YouTube exclusively just to listen to music. So that's you can't really.
Yeah, there's the music aspect, and then the sort of social. Oh God, what is that thing I'm thinking about? Look it up. Oh, there's the video right there. Mm-hmm. It's a sort of it's a great social repository, but also kind of not so great in a lot of other ways.
Yeah, I find the thing is with YouTube is that it's hard to get outside of the algorithm. It's like when I log into YouTube, I see all the stuff that's catered to me, So I see all the synthesizer demos and all the kinds of music that I listen to and that kind of stuff. But
the trick is they have an incognito mode.
Oh, okay.
Granted, I don't know how well that actually escapes you from the algorithm, but I think it claims to.
Yeah, sure. That's good advice, because I feel like the stuff that you were mentioning, I'm like, I don't see a lot of like random stuff on YouTube normally in terms of like what they suggest, because it's all based on my viewing history, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
But I'm sure it won't be that hard to get outside the box.
And it's highly frustrating when you listen to something or find something that you just don't want to hear anything about again, and that's all they send to you for 2 weeks.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Ryan and Chris, well, thank you guys so much for performing tonight, for Piqued.
It's a pleasure.
And I should say that it is January 27th, 2021.
Yes. We made it.
We're still here. We're still performing. And and of course, Piqued does not exist without you. Without Ryan, without Chris, without all the performers that we've had. It's an amazing thing that we've been able to have these great performers. As I mentioned last month, back in December, we had all these great performers, and up until now, we're still going strong. And I'm really impressed with everybody that we've had, and I'm very humbled.
And it's super awesome that you've been able to adapt to present conditions where we can't get together in person, so we can interact and have great conversations online and via video chat.
Thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate that, man. Thank you very much. Very, very nice of you to say.
Yeah, I want to thank Ryan and Nate for joining me tonight, but I most especially want to thank Corey and Richard, thank you so much. We really appreciate what you guys are doing for the Bay Area and for all the world, all the digital world. We appreciate what you guys are doing, the hard work you're putting in to bring this community together and expose our digital
Underbellies.
Yes, exactly. That's the word I was looking for.
Perfect. Yes,
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you, Chris. I really, really appreciate it. And as Sensor Music says, another great show from Pete. Thank you, Sensor Music. I really appreciate it, man. We're closing down the show. It's almost 9 p.m. and I'm going to close the show out tonight. Thank you guys so much again for performing tonight. Intafon, Chris Otchy, and Nate from Cali Audio for having that great presentation about Cali Audio music speakers. It was so much fun. You guys, this is what the show is all about. Thank you so much again for coming out, performing. Ryan, Chris, you guys are great. I can't thank you enough. It was so much fun to have you guys. You guys took the show out and just had a ball. You guys performed it out, and you just had great questions for each other. And I can't ask enough. It was so much fun. You guys, thank you so much again.
Thanks for the opportunity.
I really appreciate what you did tonight. And there's so much I could try to say, but I can't. It's so great to have you guys. I want to say thank you so much. Stay home and stay safe.
Adios.